group rides, how it works is, so for example, in the yellow group, every week somebody is a leader and that person will design the route and they'll send it out on WhatsApp, and they're responsible for making sure everybody's okay in the group, that we follow the route. And it's casual, it's not regimented, but every week somebody has to take on that role. And you even do a training to be a ride leader, so right, what taking on that role means.
I was riding with a common friend of ours, Dipankar, and we were both not at the level that we were at a couple of years ago. And I think there was a beautiful stretch where we were sort of cycling along the highway and just comfortably, because we created the space to have that comfortable conversation about not competing with your previous self. Because in so many things in life, you have these benchmarks, we have these numbers, we have a number of performance metrics. You have to know when to use them, because there are times when, you, especially if you are someone who's even halfway good at something, you will have probably done something really cool. You can't pull that off all the time.
I am Venki, a working professional in IT as well as an amateur masters athlete and a coach for endurance sports. You are listening to the Working Athlete Podcast. Here, I talk to working athletes from all walks of life and experts from various sports to provide you with inspiration, training tips, and lifestyle advice. If this is something that interests you, I have a small request from you. Please subscribe to the channel on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. You can also let me know what you like and what you would like to listen to more of by commenting in the comment section on YouTube. I promise to do my best to improve with each episode and bring you the best content that helps you and me get better each day. In this episode, I talk to my friends and teammates at Spectrum Racing, Vicki Nicholson and Hari Menon. I have known Vicki and Hari since 2011 and we have been friends and teammates ever since. Vicki is a leadership coach and was the very second guest on this podcast back in 2020. Hari has been on this podcast sharing his 4 decades of running journey in episode number 74 as well. They both now live and race in Ireland. On their recent visit to Bangalore, I took the opportunity to sit down with them and talk about the riding and racing in Ireland. They shared excellent insights into the club culture, club level group rides, club races, and a lot more. They also shared a few insights into leadership at work, which is their area of expertise, and how sport can help some to excel at work as well. It was a lovely conversation with 2 amazing humans. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. This episode is brought to you by The Bike Affair. If you are in search of a one-stop destination that caters to all your cycling needs, our today's sponsor, The Bike Affair, is the perfect place to check out. I have known the founders of The Bike Affair, Krish and Gokul, personally for nearly 15 years now. In fact, my first century ride was with Krish back in 2008. They are both exceptional human beings and entrepreneurs that believe in providing exceptional service to their customers. And it shows. With over 14 years of experience, the Bike Affair has established itself as a trusted source offering honest advice and exceptional service. They are offering a special treat for the listeners of this podcast. You can enjoy a 10% discount on your first order by using the code BikeyVenki on their website. So if you are in Hyderabad, visit their store in Kondapur, or if you are anywhere else in India, shop online by using the link thebikeaffair.com. I will leave the link in the show notes. Now, enjoy the podcast. Vicki, Hari, welcome to the Working Athlete Podcast again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, for the listeners, a bit of a background. Vicki was my very second guest on the podcast, and I have interviewed Hari. Maybe I have to get the number right, but after a few episodes.
Yeah. 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
And a little bit of anecdote that I want to share with that was when I was getting started. I was very nervous as I am now, but
We'll change that
yeah,
soon.
yeah. So I still remember that we were doing it on Zoom, and I was like very nervous to kind of get started and where to start, how to start, and all that. And like Vicky, you immediately noticed that and said, let's do a little bit of breathing exercise to calm yourself down. And it was like a breeze afterwards, it's I knew that you were a good friend and all that, but still I was very nervous doing this because it was a new thing for me.
Yeah.
And you were kind enough to you were sharp enough to notice that and kind enough to take me in and calm me down, and then
Yeah.
get it out. And that's the I saw that leadership kind of thing there, and we'll get into some of that, but I want to touch a lot of things. Like, you were here, you lived in India for like 20 years nearly, and then moved back to Ireland, um, just before the pandemic, right?
31st of January 2020.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Just before.
And the lockdowns kicked in about 6 weeks after we
Right.
set up house.
Yeah, yeah. So how was the move, and how did it affect? How did it change your sport and life?
Well, the strangest thing about the move was, I think I left here on the 31st of January 2020, thinking that I'd be back in about 6 or 8 weeks to do some work. So, we knew that there was a virus in China somewhere, but we'd no idea how it was going to affect all of our lives.
Right.
So that changed, obviously. And we found ourselves very quickly. You arrived, what date, Harry?
On the 12th of February.
Yeah. So, by the end of February, early March, COVID was really kicking in seriously in Europe.
Yeah.
And initially in Ireland, we had a 2 kilometer radius. We couldn't go beyond that. So that obviously restricted our lives. But they did encourage you to go out, but not too far. So our first 2 years in Ireland, I would say 2020 and 21 were very much dominated by COVID. And we did things, right? We still stayed fit.
I'd like to I might add that like many cyclists and runners everywhere, we worked very hard at finding creative solutions to these restrictions. So we became experts at finding good. Cycling is hard, but even cycling, we managed to find good loops that only marginally teased out the 2 kilometer limit, and then once we got a 5 kilometer radius, we could do a little more, and we managed a bit more. And I must confess, we may have cheated slightly, maybe a kilometer, half a kilometer this way or that way, as one does. It was hard, but the thing is, one of the really nice things, especially when you compare with draconian lockdowns elsewhere, and people really suffered, so I have enormous sympathy for them, is that you did have some people in positions of authority who understood that it's important to get out into the fresh air and do something. And I'm glad we did, because it kept our sanity as well. And not
That
just
is very important.
Yeah,
right?
and not just as athletes, as people who are just keen on the outdoors. It just matters so much.
So after the COVID restrictions kind of eased, I think you slowly kind of got into more group riding, and also I see that you are taking part in a lot of duathlons and stuff. So how is that transition back into racing take place?
Well, actually, I'm going to take you in a slightly different direction
Sure.
for a moment, because
Yeah.
what was coming back to me was when you said you got into group riding. And yes, we were riding just the two of us much of the time. We didn't really have a community. And one day I was out on my own, and I got a flat. And I was stuck on the side of the road trying to change this flat. And this guy turned up and he said, "Can I help you out?" I said, "That'd be great." And he did help me out. And then he said, "You know what? There's a whole bunch of us riding together. You shouldn't be riding on your own. Why don't you come up the road and have lunch with us and a coffee?" Well, this was a member of Brey Wheelers Cycling Club. And I came home that day and I said to Harry, "Okay, I've met this guy called Mark. We're going to sign up for the Brey Wheelers Cycling Club." So that was how we got into the Brey Wheelers.
Nice.
Yeah, and I actually got 2 flats that day. Another flat after I joined the group.
Right.
And I remember somebody even loaned me a tube. So yeah, that was how we got there. That was the first club that we joined.
Yeah, and a little background on the club. It's actually one of the older clubs in Ireland, and it was founded in 1949. So we are actually celebrating our 75th anniversary this year. And with many clubs, the club sporting culture is really important in countries like that. So one thing is like when you're competing, you often compete in your club colors, and you'll find regular people cheering you on because they recognize the club, and that's quite a lovely thing. And the history of the club also matters a lot. I mean, we have a few competitive riders at various levels, but one of the early members of the club was a man called Shea Elliott, who is a legendary cyclist in Ireland, very good classics rider, and maybe an even better Grand Tour rider. He's actually the first Irishman to have ever worn the yellow jersey, red jersey, and the pink jersey.
Wow.
At some point he's worn them all.
Nice.
A very sad story, probably worth looking up, because as with many geniuses, the genius did not exactly fit the opportunities available, but a brilliant rider. And it's lovely to have a little bit of that history in a club, because you also realize that these clubs do a fabulous job of accommodating everybody from a raw beginner. In my running club, for example, one of the biggest programs is a Couch to 5K program, which is like really people have no experience of running. And then we have in my running club, the fastest runner is a 5-time Olympian. And similarly, the cycling club has people like this. One of the members' sons cycles with Jumbo Visma. Wow. So, who has ridden with us. So you have that level, but you also have people who are just beginning. And they do find a lovely, welcoming way to sort of get you in, but also a structure, and this is important, also a structured way to make sure that you ride roughly with people who will, that you will fit in with, that you'll not pose a danger to anybody else with, and importantly, you will have a fun ride with. I mean, as in, you're not killing yourself just to stay with them, and I think that's important. I think Vicki can add a few more things about the dynamic of how the clubs work, and then you may have a few questions.
Yeah. Well, say with the Brey Wheelers, we have 5 different groups, categories, ranging from red being the slowest, orange, yellow, green and blue. So, people who ride red would be very leisure riders doing short rides, just people who want to get out in company. People in the blue group would be pretty serious racers.
They ride red in the nationals. A few of them would have raced internationally. So it's a crazy level. Don't even try and stay on their wheel.
Yeah. So we ride with the yellow group. Harry could probably ride with the green group, actually, but he chooses to ride with the yellow group.
Because sometimes you pick the company that you enjoy as well. Right. And in a group ride, I think that matters a lot.
Yeah.
And we've talked about, these group activities, and I think you talked a little bit about it in your opening remarks and questions. Something that I regret now, we may not have done enough of, was just working together nicely in a group. And as an experienced cyclist yourself, you know what a difference it makes when you're very confident that the person this close to you is also a good bike handler, and you're going around a corner at a reasonable speed, or you're descending at a reasonable speed, and you feel it's fine, it's okay. And that takes a while to build.
Get used to,
To build and to get used to both sides of it. Right. And I think that's really important, being able to, learn the skills of riding in a group where you can build that sort of skill and learn from people around you.
Yeah.
And
So I'm kind of interested because I see a few clubs that are, quite a few clubs coming up in Bangalore as well. I'm kind of interested to know how the club culture works there. How do they kind of structure these, various group rides? Or actually, I gather they organize club races as well and stuff like. So can you, touch upon those aspects a bit?
Yeah, I think what's really key is the volunteer. You can't join the club if you're not going to volunteer into helping to organize events or, take
Martial art races.
the marshalling. So, for example, and all the clubs are affiliated to the governing body. So, Cycling Ireland is the Irish governing body. So, you join Cycling Ireland and then you can select the club you want to be part of. And when you say you want to join Brey Wheelers, every year you have to agree to at least volunteer for one of their two big races.
Nice.
They have two big races where they, invite top cyclists across the country. So you have to do that. And then they have two club leagues every year through the summer. And if you want to race in those, you have to marshal for one race.
A minimum
league.
of one race.
Yeah. So it's absolutely dependent on that. The races can't happen without the community of club members
Right.
coming in and volunteering. And then you'll always have a committee, which changes over, some people serve over several years, some of those positions rotate.
Yeah.
And then
Some enjoy doing that kind of work, as always happens, as you know.
Yeah.
And the group rides, how it works is, so for example, in the yellow group, every week somebody is a leader. And that person will design the route and they'll send it out on WhatsApp. And they're responsible for making sure everybody's okay in the group, that we follow the route. And it's casual,
Yeah.
it's not regimented,
Yeah.
but every week somebody has to take on that role. And you even do a training to be a ride leader. So right, what taking on that role means.
Yeah, and safety issues are important, and some that we would not have thought of here. For example, you can't ride a flat bar bike in a road bike
In a
group
group,
because of the danger of hooking
Correct.
your bars. You can't go with tri-bars, and you can't bring a juvenile into the race without special permission. You actually have to have, if you want to bring a child, because a lot of people are building up youngsters and trying to get them into riding, and some of them join us. You have to be somebody who is affiliated with the police, as in has a sign on and approval. So you have all these safety measures built in, which sometimes seems fussy, but if you think about it, these are good things. Just to touch a little bit on what Vicky said about the volunteering and stuff like that. Also, the nature of our races here is a little different from the ones that we had in Bangalore, which is that they're not straight up and down a highway. They are often fairly technical courses on gravelly roads, lots of descents, lots of climbs, lots of twisty, tricky turns that are often taken at high speed. So you have to have marshals. Often you'll have sometimes, and there's traffic. You can't stop traffic. So you sometimes turns will have 3 to even 4 marshals. So you're actually asking for a fairly significant commitment. So therefore, this roster is taken very seriously, and there's even a system for, if you want to do a particular race and you've been signed on as a marshal for that, there are options for signing out of that and swapping with somebody else so that you can do a race that you really want to and they can swap with you instead.
Right.
So that's quite a big thing. So it's actually not that different from what you, for example, had set up many years ago with BAR Racing and, what the regular crew had done with Bangalore Bicycle Championships. It's just that I would say, because more people are there and because people have been doing this for a while, there's an element of structure to it.
Right.
And there's a degree of commitment in that people understand. And I'm talking about even the best riders, and these guys compete at the national championship level.
Yeah.
Even they understand that one day they will be sitting on the side of the road waving a flag and saying, "Stop car, please let the
Right.
let the riders go through." And here, sometimes we would hesitate to ask, some of our respected, or what we call in India senior riders to do that. No. they will do it, and they're happy to do it,
Right.
and they understand that they will do it because that's their way of giving back.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that kind of reminds me of instances where Naveen John used to turn up, help me sweep the corners in
No, he
race
would
and stuff.
completely.
Yeah. So yeah.
But
yeah.
I did notice, like, for example, there were a couple of races where it was just you doing all the work, which is a bit unfair. I mean, you'd want a few more people.
No, that's also the reason I want to kind of understand this so that I can bring in, more people and structure so that this is something that should go on even if I am like not in town or
Absolutely.
not there at all and all that, right? So that is the reason, selfish reason to kind of, trying to get that knowledge from you guys on those. So you mentioned two club races and stuff. Two
leagues.
Two league
Yeah.
races. What is that?
Okay, so each league would have 6 races or 7 races?
Something like that.
Yeah.
In spring and summer.
Yeah, there's a spring league and a summer league. And I think the summer league counts for the club championships, if I remember right. I could be wrong on this. I might have to be corrected on it. And each league we have, we're fortunate enough to live in an area where there's sort of multiple race routes. And they're not quite crits. They are road races raced in the countryside on back roads. But they're slightly different circuits, each of them. And they're not hugely long races. Like, here in Bangalore, we often do massive races that are, what is the longest? 160K?
160.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That never happens except for the big ones, which the pros ride. And pros and the absolute top level.
What are the typical distances you guys?
I'll get to that. These vary from 25 to maybe 45 kilometers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it's run at a really high tempo. And they often Thursday
Evenings.
Yeah, so they often run in the evenings in summer because, because we're so far 55, 53 degrees north, we're so far north that the evenings are really, really long in summer. So you have the luxury of starting a race at 7:30 in the evening, and even when the last rider finishes, which might be 9, it's still red light.
Right.
So it's safe.
Yeah.
That's the important thing. So there's enough time to go home after that, no problem. So there would be maybe 4 races on different circuits, each of which has, once you ride them, because they're also the rides that we do our regular Saturday rides on, each of them has slightly different characteristics, which you after a while get to know. Oh, this particular bump, this particular climb, this tricky turn, etc. So these are 4 circuit races. There is one time trial, which is one of them is on it's actually on a highway, but they've done it in a fairly safe way that you don't actually have to cross any road, and you can go through an underpass and through a roundabout, so it's a loop. The other one is also on an access road to highway, where again you can do the sort of straight up and straight down, and you can go reasonably fast. And there is one hill climb. And the hill climb is again a time trial, but it's a timed hill. It's a bit of a beast. It's very short. I mean, like Bangalore, I think we're sort of used to these massive lengths, like 50-kilometer time trial. This is 2 kilometers, but what are 2 kilometers? Because the first kilometer is rolling, and the second one, it reaches 23%.
Oh,
Yes.
There's one thing I wanted to add about the races. They're handicapped.
Yes.
So there's usually up to 4 to 6 categories.
Yeah,
And
depending on the number of people who turn
The
up.
idea is to level everyone up.
Right.
And the handicap in the spring season will be slightly tilted towards the slower riders. And in the second season, perhaps slightly tilted towards the fast riders.
Yeah, and you have a time trial at the beginning of the season, usually April, May, which roughly establishes the handicapping groups.
Right. So you have 46 categories, you say?
4 to 6.
4 to 6.
4 to 6.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You got
It
it.
depends on how many people turn up for the race also.
Yeah.
There's a lot of skill in that. We've got a couple of older club members who've been doing this for years. They know what time to send off the first group, the
Right.
next group, the next group.
Yeah.
And of course, the best guys are chasing,
Yeah.
the people who've gone out first.
Yeah, and that group, it's something else to see, because these guys will be 4 to 5 of them a pack, many of them will have been racing for years, and they know exactly what to do, and they it's like wolves hunting the sheep.
Yeah,
A wolf pack an operation. Yeah, really.
right. We have been doing handicap races at
I
Bar,
remember, yeah.
and they are actually uh, they are enjoyed by almost everyone who is part of it. Like the slowest to the fastest, they are like done by the end of it. So they are very well received, I must say. Coming to the more on the racing and cycling. So you are now taking part in duathlons and stuff. So how is
Yeah. So I had a bad crash about 2.5 years ago, racing on a motor circuit, and I didn't just break my collarbone. I also damaged all the ligaments in my shoulder, and I hit my head quite badly, and ended up in hospital overnight. So at that point, I said to myself, maybe I've reached an age where I don't need to be in a bunch on a corner and put myself at risk.
On the way, this is on the finishing straight, and I will add, for the benefit of any couple that does sport, please do not watch your spouse crash. I was actually lining up to take a picture of the finishing sprint, and then I saw this. Well, it's a sight I will live with for the rest of my life.
And the truth is, because you don't have all the age categories in women's cycling in Ireland, you might have one or two, but actually this was everybody together. It was a small race, but I was not going to be winning anything. So even putting myself in that position was probably a bit silly. So I decided to stop bunch racing at that time and to sort of look, because I like to be doing something competitive. So one thing was duathlons. The other thing was to improve my run times, which, I never had run that much, and to put those two things together in the duathlon and to time trial.
Yeah.
So that's how I've ended up being in 3 clubs: the cycling club, the triathlon club for doing duathlons, and the Kilcool Athletics, so the Wicklow Triathlon Club and the Kilcool Athletics Club. So right now it's duathlon season. That starts before the triathlons. And we have a national series. They're sprint duathlons that they start with. So they typically be 4 or 5K run, 20K bike, 4 or 5K run. And again, great range, some really good athletes doing these, in 50 something minutes. And, there'd be people doing them in an hour and a half.
Right.
And, I fall somewhere in amongst all of that. And they have age categories. So every 5 years. So you can race against your age category.
I will point out that last year she won the national series, so she is a national champion in her age cat.
In my age category.
Yeah, but still, I mean, this is a country that takes it seriously. So you are up against people who are very good. As in the good people in her age group have finished mid-pack or thereabouts at World Championships level. So it's not trivial. They are good.
Yeah.
The best guy in my age category has come third in the World Champs.
Wow.
So we're up against some very serious.
The level is a little bit more than what is
A little challenging. Yes.
But the thing about that is it lifts you. It's two things, actually. One is you're just not going to win that much, but you're also going to lift. You're going to race alongside people who there will always be someone better than you. And age categories, they're kind of random things.
Right.
But, to race, even for example, we did a 5-mile running race a few weeks ago. It's called the Rahini 5 Mile. And in my age category, there were 60 women running. So, 60 women. Wow. Here, you just don't get that, and that was in a 5-year age category. So you've got a great opportunity in there to race against yourself in a way, to better your own times. And you'll probably always have some women that'll be, going a lot faster than you. And it just shows what someone at that age can do.
Yeah.
That is both simultaneously humbling, inspiring, and just beautiful to watch. For someone who likes sport, for me, it's not even the humbling and inspiring. It is just I love this. This is beautiful to see.
Right. Yeah. Talking of age and age categories, right? Now, all of us are getting older, and so it's a fact. Pandemic feels like it was yesterday. Now we are in 2024, and kids are like, my older one is in 10th. It's like, when did this happen?
Right, right.
So coming to this, and age and sport. So how are you guys? What are your learnings that kind of helped you cope with recovery, and continuing to do these races, and continuing to stay active, and uh, at a competitive level?
The aging working athlete.
Yeah.
What we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Yeah, though I think it applies to everybody. Well, I'll start with a couple of points and then Vicky can add to it. One was that we became very, very conscious of a number of things. One of the biggest was sleep. Sleep. I mean, I would normally have clubbed that with recovery, but like I'll keep that separate because sleep was such a huge factor. I struggled a lot in Bangalore because, and I think this would apply to anybody in any major Indian metro. The simple reality is the only time that you can peacefully run or cycle or do anything, even a simple morning walk, is early in the morning, which means a commitment to waking up fairly early, which in turn means a commitment to going to sleep fairly early, which in turn means negotiating all kinds of things with your family, with your friends, with your social life, and with work.
Right.
And that's really not easy. And in fact, to be honest, for many of our circle of friends, it's actually nearly impossible.
Right.
One of the luxuries of living in a place where the weather is more conducive and bad traffic is taken out of the equation because we live in a fairly small village, is that we can adjust these timings a little bit. So getting a good 8+ hours of sleep has been a colossal thing. The second really important thing is, as we've grown older, we've become much more conscious of diet. We both our friends joke about us that like we're a couple that apparently we love our treats, and we still do, as you know very well because we talk a lot about food. That we still love our nice things to eat. We've just become much more mindful about yes, I love my biryani, but I will not eat it every day. I will, maybe once a month or once in 2 months, I'll have one and I'll truly enjoy it and savor it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we really try and keep whole grains, fresh fruit, good vegetables. These are the basics. Eat food, mostly plants, and just good produce, and that just takes care of an enormous sort of factor.
Michael Pollan, right? That
is the original quote.
Yeah.
I would also add now to bring in recovery, a sort of awareness that please do not go out and hammer every ride and every run, even though we enjoy this, because there is a joy to riding fast. There is an even greater joy, as a runner I will tell you, to running at a particular pace. You have to learn to please just save that for 1 or 2 small interval sessions and your races.
Right.
Rest, just chill and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that discipline is super hard to do, but I think we've kind of got there. So that recovery, like never do back-to-back hard days. Just give yourself, if you want to give yourself an extra day of, easy sort of active recovery, give yourself that. Huge. That makes an enormous difference. And then maybe one more, because of the clubs, and then Vicky can add, is because of the clubs and because of the nature of the clubs, you do meet people who are kind of that you like and whose company you enjoy, but who are that little bit better than you. And so when you do your hard stuff, they're there to push you. And I think both of us have got a little better and a little stronger just because of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, to all of that. I mean, it's really about creating an environment, I think, as best you can around you, to support what you want to do. And I mean, a couple of other things for me personally is, by nature of personality, I've always wanted to do everything. And I've really had to let go of that with getting older, because what I've realized is recovery becomes really important, and being more selective about what I want to do. My goals are to get better at things. That's very important to me. So if I want to get better at something, then I've got to let go of some other things and get quite clear about what is it that really matters to me. And I think that could be very different for each of us.
Right.
I mean, for me, it might be I want to run 10K faster. For somebody else, it might be that I want to have really good social life through cycling or running. For somebody else, it might be doing certain distances. But know what is important for you and prioritize that, because otherwise you can end up sort of not achieving anything for yourself. So I think that awareness of what are you looking for from the sport. And I would add that many of the people that we cycle and run with are not interested in racing, but they love the sport and they're out there every week doing it, and it's part of their lives.
Right.
So, we both happen to still have some competitive ambitions, and Harry hasn't had a chance to talk much about his so far. But, you're still keen to race.
Yeah, I do enjoy it. I think, like Vicky, I have become a little wary of mass start bike racing, much as that is an enormous sort of adrenaline rush. It's truly wonderful. I mean, you've done enough, so you know what it feels like, and it really is one of those things that unless you've actually done it, it's very hard to describe. And sometimes I often feel that, like, please don't criticize racers that you see on TV, because this is something else going on. You really have to have been there. Anyway, but the time trialing I'm keen on, the running and the duathlons I'm really keen on, and it's been very useful and positive in terms of the specific context of me, an Indian guy moving to a completely new country, and Ireland is still, the big cities and a couple of the university towns are pretty homogeneous, because you have all kinds of people from not heterogeneous. There are lots of people from all over the world. But other than that, it's especially when you live in more rural areas, everybody is Irish. So like you do tend to stand out, and yes, sure, if I was an IT guy or a nurse or a doctor or something like that, they're used to seeing Indians. But a runner or a cyclist, not many. Okay, so usually I'm the guy or the one or two people out there. There are a few, but it's wonderful because this, like several other competitive sports, it gives you an instant access into a world and a society that, like, for many people, you see other migrants who come there and, like, they could spend a generation there and they won't have been accepted the same way. Here, like, you do a hard race or you or a brutal training session, and somebody just taps you on the shoulder and says, "Well done, mate." And that acceptance will not happen anywhere else, not even in the workplace. And so for me as an outsider, that is phenomenal.
That is,
we could do that with people who came here, and I think to some extent we've done that with people who've come.
I mean,
but that's us. I don't know how many else would feel accepted.
Right. No, that is, I think, a bit universal in some sense. The guys who who come here and not afraid of the traffic and actually make an effort to get out and find groups like us.
Yes.
They have a completely different perspective of what India.
We were just talking about a couple of mutual friends. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean that is very true, and like Michael Dresberg comes to mind, who's like toured all over India
and come back multiple times. He likes it.
Yeah, and. The other day we were riding in Hesergata, and the route was curated by a Swedish national, right?
Talking about that. Yes.
Yeah, it's like amazing. He lives in that area and rides every day, and he comes up with these beautiful routes that we neglect. We were mostly struck on the highways, out and back kind of thing. It's like these beautiful country roads to explore. And so I think the acceptance kind of comes in when the sport brings us together in such a good way. And also the great things that you talked about when aging, talking about sleep, the importance of sleep, and how it helps the recovery. Also the prioritizing, right? Prioritizing what is important to you and kind of finding out.
Yes.
And all these things are really important. And I am discovering that I am learning now as I'm getting closer to 50 that sleep is massive.
Yeah, it really is one of the
huge
biggest.
difference.
Yeah. And then, like, I just wanted to add, in the context of diet, well, you don't, but like, several of us enjoy a drink or a couple of beers and stuff like that, which is fine. And then we live in a country that, like, where you get wonderful beers. But you also learn,
Yeah.
that, if you want to do hard effort, or, just have a sort of steady, mileage pattern over the following few weeks or months or whatever, or you're building up for a big race, you have to be much more mindful about these things. So it's also, and the thing is, like, this would not be a factor for somebody in their 20s and 30s, because you are almost indestructible at that age. But at our age, you really have to be quite mindful about this and say, no, I mean, I will not go to the pub with my friends.
Yeah.
Cheer.
Right. And also the thing that you mentioned about keeping the rides very easy, which most of the time.
Yeah, keep the easy stuff easy.
Yeah.
Make the hard stuff harder.
Right.
And do very little of the hard stuff.
Yeah. So that is super important because, over the years, we have seen every group ride becomes a Hammerfest, right? So that I kind of noticed that getting out into the country and doing these back roads actually doesn't give so many chances for these for that hammering. So I'm kind of leaning towards that from multiple perspectives, because it also gives you a chance to explore, get off the trafficy stuff, and also keep it easy, like endurance, truly endurance, not like another race.
Yeah,
right?
well, as a coach, I mean, like, the single biggest thing, and that is happening with a number of sports scientists that I follow on social media. People are just sort of realizing this thing. Just build that engine first.
Yeah.
Just build that base. Then do all these other things. You're most welcome, because I'm sure all these tweaks and things will give you that little edge. But without the base, they mean nothing.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. And now I want to move to your specialty of leadership, and how sport also kind of helps in that, right? So what are your thoughts on that? The work and the leadership, how is sport important then?
Maybe a line of to give context to anybody who's watching this about, in leadership, what is it that we do as an organization?
Right.
Yeah. Well, Venki kind of started with that when he talked about me noticing that he was nervous, and I was thinking about, as a coach, that's so important, right? When you start a coaching session, your focus is on the person in front of you and how are they arriving into that session, and what can you do, to really help situate and land them in that space so it becomes a productive time with you. So our work is in leadership. It's in developing leaders, mainly in corporate environments. We coach one-on-one and work with teams as well. And we do a bit of learning in areas like influence, communication, and sort of broader leadership capabilities.
Strategic thinking as well.
Yes. And I often reflect on, what are the parallels that we see between, being an athlete, or, being into sport and being a good leader. And I think there are a lot. I think particularly if we contextualize it right now, we look at the world that we're living in, it's not an easy place. We're living in a time of such uncertainty, ambiguity, war, climate,
Right.
layoffs. Leadership is so important right now. And while many people might have sort of linked, being strategic or being a good team player between sport and leadership, the one that really lands for me goes back to what we spoke about earlier, which is being able to create the right environment. So we talked about how, as an older athlete, you need to create the right environment for yourself. as a leader, what are you doing? You're really trying to get people to want to follow you. And you need to create the right environment for that. And essentially for people to be able to show up at their best and work at their best. And in many ways, it's these qualities of self-awareness, resilience. That's certainly something that we learn as athletes, right? It's full of ups and downs.
Right.
And, we're all in this for the long haul, right? I mean, how long have you been cycling now?
15 and a half years, I think.
Right. And hopefully you'll be doing it for more than another 15 years.
Yeah. Hopefully 80 plus or wherever. The day, till the day I breathe.
And actually, you've been, quite transparent and vulnerable at times, I think, in your blog, sharing, your own personal ups and downs along the way. And I think that's really linked to leadership, because I think good leaders are people who can navigate themselves through those with self-awareness and have the ability to articulate them and then help other people go through that too. And sport stretches us in many ways. It stretches us when we're trying to climb a mountain, but it stretches us just to get up every morning, balance everything else in our lives. So I think we learn a lot of the skills that will essentially draw people towards us as leaders.
Right.
So I love to draw those parallels.
Yeah.
Setbacks in particular, because I think anybody who has a regular sort of practice with sport, runners, cyclists, etc., multi-sport athletes, people, anything that where you get out and do something 4 to 5 days a week. But if you've been doing it for some years, you will 100% have had 1 or 2 major setbacks. You might have broken a bone, you might have injured something. And as you know, with many of these setbacks, it's like, 6 months training gone down the drain, or 2 years of training gone down the drain, or like, a forced, 3 to 6 months bit of inactivity.
Yeah.
And, these can be almost soul killing. But I think most of us have found a way through them, or at least trying in our best own best ways to somehow negotiate a sensible path through them.
Yeah.
And I think the resilience that Vicki talked about, that you draw upon to do that, as important lessons elsewhere in life.
Also, you talked about the importance of being aware, right? The awareness.
Yes.
So what are some of the things that one can do to become a little better at being self-aware, to kind of recognize these the ups and downs and try to get better at navigating them?
Yeah. I think articulating them is a starting point. I notice a lot of leaders I work with will, when they come into a coaching space, it's the opportunity for them to talk about how are they right now? How's their week been? And it's easy to think you should be a superhero, but sometimes just being able to say, wow, I'm really tired, or it's been a stressful week, or it's been a great week. To acknowledge that and to notice it and articulate it, that's a very key part of being self-aware. And when you develop that kind of awareness of yourself and your own emotions and you can articulate them, you're going to notice it in other people too, because it's the same part of the brain that works.
Right.
So if I know what's happening with me, I will also notice what's happening with you.
Yeah.
And that's going to enable me to show up better as a leader. And sometimes, in pretty high stakes meetings, you may be able to get beyond just what is the content of the meeting and just observe what's happening in this meeting. Who's getting a bit agitated? Who's checked out? Who's engaged?
Right.
And by noticing those dynamics around you, you can address them and often be a lot more influential and get a lot more outcomes from meetings.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, this is really important, right? Because we spend a lot, I think majority of our life in our workplaces, and if you are kind of checked out or not really at your 100%, you will be kind of wasting a lot of time, and yours as well as others.
Yes.
I think being aware and working on yourself to kind of get better there would definitely help in the long term, as it is with sport, right?
Yes.
We always work towards getting that FTP up or that pace up and all this. And there are maybe different metrics at workplace, but it all kind of comes down to that your inner gauges, right? That awareness and stuff.
That awareness, if I can add, I mean, one thing, because it came up in a conversation at yesterday's bike ride, because the context was I was riding with a common friend of ours, Dipankar, and we were both not at the level that we were at a couple of years ago. In fact, significantly less. And I think like there was a beautiful stretch where we were sort of cycling along the highway and just comfortably, because we created the space to have that comfortable conversation about not competing with your previous self. Because in so many things in life, you have these benchmarks, we have these numbers, we have a number of performance metrics. You have to know when to use them, because there are times when, you, especially if you are someone who's even halfway good at something, you will have probably done something really cool. You can't pull that off all the time.
Yeah.
So don't give yourself a hard time because you can't achieve that today. Today you can do something else.
Right.
Just never feel bad about it. And who knows, maybe tomorrow something even better will be achieved.
But
is learning that peace of mind to accept it. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
I think because both of us had struggled with it.
Right.
Because we found ourselves competing with our previous selves.
Yeah.
No, that is a big thing. It is, as we get older, with like 15 years of in cycling, we like you just mentioned that there are things like that sub 25 on Nandi, all these things, right? And maybe that race you where you were a monster pulling the whole peloton along and all that. But those things are things of past. You got to
done with it.
You got to be at peace with it. You got to understand that there are a lot that levels have changed and your life has changed.
Yeah, and there's so many other wonderful things that you can still do.
Correct. So it is very important that you accept and that you need not be always competing with your older self. Right?
Yeah.
Not just with the younger lot, but also with your older self. Also, you kind of have to be aware of that. It also comes back to that awareness again
and acceptance.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's not. I will say that if you've got a competitive streak in your body, it is hard.
Oh, it is very hard.
To terms with it.
There's just sort of two last things that come up for me, and that the word self-compassion, which I think is one of the hardest things for us as human beings, particularly if we're a bit driven and high achievers.
Right.
But the science shows us that self-compassion enables us to bounce back quicker. So things may not go the way we want. If we can say, okay, I did my best, I'm going to let go of the rest, we will bounce back much, much quicker. And then I think growth is not just getting up Nandi faster.
Yeah.
Growth is so many different things. And if I link that back again to, the corporate world right now, where people are not getting promoted so much, the traditional metric of growth, right?
Right.
Promotion. But how else are you growing on the job? What else are you learning about yourself and your work and how you're showing up? So we'd always try to get people to look at it through that lens as well.
Yeah, that is beautiful. How else are you growing? It's not just the traditional metrics, right? Yeah.
There's much more to it.
Yeah. Amazing. I think we touched upon so many things. Any last parting comments and words of advice for working athletes before we end the session?
Do you have anything to say? I think we covered quite a lot. I would only sort of reiterate that don't forget to sleep.
Yeah.
Please. The rest follows.
Yeah.
Right.
I think mine is just gratitude. I think I'm learning to be grateful. Every day I can get out there on the bike, get out for a run. I'm grateful to be able to do it.
Right.
That's very true. I am, that, in fact, you asked right at the beginning, something relating to, what's changed in this new environment. I have, over the last 4 years, developed this thing of every run, it doesn't matter whether it's a small jog to the, village to buy something or whatever, or a serious bike ride. I actually feel thankful.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Awesome. That's a great note to end on. Thank you for
Thank you.
taking time.
Thank you.
Grateful to you too.
Thank you. That was my conversation with Vicky and Hari. I hope you enjoyed that. If you are enjoying these podcasts and are finding them useful, please consider supporting the podcast by subscribing to it on YouTube as well as on your favorite podcasting app. It really helps. Thanks again for your continuous support. See you next week with another guest.